large fish indicator. This is one of the most well-known indicators, particularly within Europe, that we use for biodiversity assessments. And it's been shown in the past by colleagues that decreases in the LFI follow periods of high fishing effort and mortality. And we wanted to see, have there been any changes more recently? So what is the LFI, the large fish indicator? It's the proportion in a demersal fish survey in terms of biomass of the catch that is dominated by large individual fish. So it's the sum of the big fish biomass catch rates divided by the total from the big and the small. And it's meant to tell us something about the higher predators within the system and the responsive to fishing. But what is a large fish? Since this is a specific indicator built on surveys, it's actually dependent on the survey data that you have, what you want to define as a large fish. And it's also dependent on the community that's available in the system. And work was done before the OSPAR QSR in 2010, particularly by ICs, looking in the North Sea to identify this value, and came up with 40 centimetres, which gave an indicator that had a high signal to noise ratio and was quite responsive to fishing, so it seemed to decline following these periods of high fishing effort and mortality. And this is what it looks like. Well, we've looked at the uncertainty as well, but I haven't plotted that here for simplicity. So in the early 80s, we had these values around about 0.3, which has then fallen considerably since. And some have said since 2000, since that low in 2001, that there might have been an increase. And there were some papers suggesting this, and then others arguing against it. And we have a reference level that we should be reaching 30% of the biomass that are represented by the larger fish within the North Sea International Bottom Trawl Survey, which, as you can see, we're a long way from at the moment. And that reference level has come up from a number of studies that looked at either relationships statistical with fishing mortality or looking at historical data that showed that we were around that value of around 0.3 in the North Sea in the early 1900s. So we've seen decline since the early 1980s, linked to the high fishing mortality and fish stocks in the 1970s. And that study was done looking at the North Sea as a whole, sort of a time series analysis. But since the 1990s, we've reduced fishing mortality a lot through fisheries management. And since 2000, we've reduced our fleet capacity through the EU Fleet Fishing Reduction Scheme. So the question is, has there been an increase in the LFI following these reductions in fishing mortality and fishing effort? And it's not particularly clear, looking at the one-time series for the North Sea, that that's the case. But if we look at it spatially, we might get some more information. So in the early 1980s, where we had the high values, the map on the left shows the distribution of the LFI scores by IC statistical rectangle. And you can see that there were sort of red areas with high LFIs throughout much of the North Sea. Whereas in the low point, between 2000 and 2002, that's really restricted to the edges and the eastern and northeastern North Sea. And if we look at every single rectangle and look at the trend over time with Kendall's tau, we can see there are statistically significant decreases in many rectangles, if you consider them individually over time. So there's been large declines on the western North Sea. And this is where we had a lot of otter trawling in the 1990s. So the fishing effort there from the international community combined, there's more red, there's more hours of fishing effort. So where we had lots of otter trawling in the 1990s, we saw these strong decreases in that area of the North Sea in the LFI. But since then, otter trawling has been reduced. We don't have these higher red areas along the UK coast. I mean, we're still fishing, particularly in the eastern North Sea, but we have reduced the trawling effort. So have we seen a response in the community, and then the indicator of it? We'll see. We've also reduced beam trawling. Beam trawling, particularly along the southern North Sea, fishing for plaice and sole, which don't feature strongly within the indicator, but still we've reduced the beam trawling effort down there substantially in terms of hours fishing between the 1990s and the 2000s, or the noughties as might call them. So if we look at the period from 2000 onwards, in terms of this spatial map of the correlations at each point, we can see that actually there have been significant increases in particular rectangles up near the Orkneys and the Shetlands, and the southern Scottish area of northeast England. but then not in the eastern North Sea. It's quite mixed there in red and blue bubbles, and we haven't got the crosses on them saying they're not particularly significant changes. So we have seen some increases, but they've been restricted to the western North Sea, which, as you may remember from earlier, is where we had the highest fishing pressure. But we're still a long way from the target. So if we look at the difference in otter trawling between those two periods by this coloured map here, we see where it's blue, that's where the otter trawling has been greatly reduced between the 2 decades. And then we look at that trend in the LFI by the rectangles, and we see where the green bubbles are with the crosses. It's the same sort of area. And when you look at those, sort of tabulate them, you get the same answer, whether you look at has fishing effort changed where the LFI has increased, and has the LFI changed where fishing has changed. Whichever way around you look at it, you come up with quite a convincing argument that actually that reduction in the otter trawling from the 1990s, where we had high otter trawling, to the 2000s seems to be resulting in a response in the community. And since that paper, we've updated the time series, and there seems to be evidence of a continued rise, which is perhaps more obvious now in the time series as a whole for the North Sea. So we're suggesting that the fleet reduction scheme and the reduction in fishing effort, the activity itself, is delivering positive results for the system, for the large fish indicator from the IPTS in particular, suggesting that the effective fisheries management is moving us towards a more balanced ecosystem with more larger individuals within the community. And hopefully this will continue. We can meet that target that's been set. So this is an indicator that's also contributing to the OSPAR intermediate assessment for biodiversity next year. And the work that I've been talking about was published in Environmental Conservation last year. George Engelhard, my colleague, is the first author there. Thank you very much.